What is happening? So, it's a new week, although it's Tuesday. I've got a podcast in the works, and it's a lot of fun. My buddy Jay from Hong Kong, I think these are both going to pretty much go up on the weekend, so I can't really build up any suspense. But if it's up and you're listening to this, definitely check it out. It's going to be cool. Nicholas Say, talking to you today for about 10 minutes, I think. And as I was eating noodle soup, the local noodle soup they called pho, but with English it's PHO, it's pho or po or something you would say maybe. As I was eating it, I was thinking about the idea of ownership and how we really, as a species, have obsessed ourselves with the concept of possession, what it is, how it's organized, and there's a lot behind it psychologically, and also in terms of sociology, socioeconomic relationships. No one really owns anything ever, right? I mean, that's the reality of the situation. But in terms of how people work, there's a huge difference in how property rights, and I don't necessarily mean just real estate, but the a person's ability to quote unquote own a thing, the way those rights are structured seem to make a huge difference in how willing people are to work or whatever. Because ultimately, and this is these people who want to be sovereign or whatever, which I think is very strange because it seems like there's sort of a fundamental lack of understanding of the nature of the system on their part. But they want to claim that somehow they have a sovereign right of possession, and that's an absurdity because property rights in general are, and I'm speaking in a more realistic and a more physical sense, quote unquote physical, are derived from a state, right? So you have a contract with a government of some form. Usually it's a local government, a state or county or something like that, that says you have possession of a defined piece of property. They make a map and give it a number or a letter or letters and numbers, and then you own it, quote unquote own. I'm going to stop saying that because it's kind of annoying, but that's how I feel about it because it's such an abstract idea that it is on the bleeding edge of madness, the idea of ownership. So when you give people that right, when you give them the ability to pay, depending on where you're at, a small amount of taxes, and then otherwise, as long as you're not breaking any laws, you can do what you want on that land. Now, when you give people that, they seem to really excel at making productive business because they think that area is somehow theirs, and that whatever profits they can derive from it are again somehow theirs. Now, if you don't ask too many questions, if you don't look behind the curtain, especially in somewhere like the United States, that that arrangement holds up pretty well. But what people miss, maybe because they don't want to see reality for what it is, even in a physical sense, is that you're essentially just entering into the best contract available with the fucking big gangster, the government, because it all comes down to the ability to exercise violence. And this is something that I've struggled with for a long time because I was brought up in a very liberal, very kind of disconnected, detached, unrealistic, ideologically speaking community, Ann Arbor, Michigan, where they really kind of shied away from engaging violence of any kind, and it's wrong and shouldn't be done. Well, I mean, that's maybe one of the stupidest ways to view violence, primarily because you don't understand the nuance of it and the necessity of it. I mean, you say, oh, we don't live in a violent place. We don't want to live somewhere where violence is used. Well, guess what? That's a terrible idea because as soon as you shut off the violence switch, it doesn't stop people from being what they are, which is angry monkeys We're nasty, angry monkeys, and we have to have, and this shouldn't even be debated. You have to have some kind of violence in a society to maintain order. That's just that simple, right? So ultimately, these contracts, to get back to the idea of ownership, these contracts that have to do with buying, selling, owning any kind of property really just come down to the ability to demand violence from the government, right? And that's part of what, in theory, the taxes go to pay for. Very interesting concept. When you take it away and you say we're going to have collectivized ownership, which is government ownership, people don't like that as much. They don't tend to be as productive. The levels of corruption, I can't really, I don't think that you could really even study that, because there's hella corruption in the United States. But there's also, like, former Soviet Union, many areas where state ownership exists. It's just, I mean, blindingly corrupt. And so that's really kind of a wash. You'd have to be a bit more specific. But in terms of economic productivity, look at what happened in the former Soviet bloc. People can't own anything. They don't think they can own anything. I mean, nobody in the United States really owns anything either. It's all owned by the government. But they don't think that way because it's like a group delusion. But that's the point, right? Is that when you feed them this line of bullshit, they work. And if you feed them the other line of bullshit, they don't work because they don't, quote unquote, own it. And somehow one of the lies is more believable than the other. So why is that, right? That's the underlying concept. I don't have an answer to that. I don't know how anyone could, but I brought that up at a bar the other day, and people didn't even want to talk about the concept that they never own anything, right? So there's obviously something there that really freaks people out. Maybe everybody wants to believe. It gets even weirder with money, because money is just debt, which doesn't exist, right? I mean, people don't understand that. A debt does not exist. It is the fundamental absence of something, right? If I owe you 10 chickens, there's no 10 chickens, right? Like, you could say in theory there had to be 10 chickens originally, but we could just agree that I owe you 10 chickens. Chickens don't have to exist. I mean, it would be odd for a debt to be denominated in something that doesn't exist, but that's essentially what we do now with fiat currency, right? Because it's not like when the modern currency regime, you go back to the U.S. dollar, that was born out of precious metals, right? Possession of precious metals by the major governments. And they all were on, up until 1971, or you could really argue up to the 30s, up to the Second World War, any major government, or any government, anyone who wanted to trade with the world powers, they had to have gold and silver, right? In 71, it was replaced by fiat, which is debt, which means there's nothing there. So we have literally created a system where everything is denominated in nothingness. In a literal sense, the prices that we pay are denominated in the absence of goods, of the absence of anything, because it is just debt, right? So it's, again, this form of high grade madness. I mean, this is not your garden variety schizophrenic. This is not the guy who stands around with his, no pants on and his tidy whities with the end is nigh sign. I mean, there's a great book most people who have any experience in the world of finance have read, something like Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. Well, I'll tell you what, fiat currency, that is like maybe the best example of an extraordinary popular delusion, because it literally, and it's not like it's fucking hidden, right? They tell you it's debt, and there's nothing behind that debt. If all the debt got fucking paid off, there wouldn't be any money. Of course, that's never going to happen, because with all the indebted governments and fucking banks and shit, and people that want more and more and more, so they just create more money, and for as long as people believe in it, it works, right? And apparently people really want to believe in it, much like any other kind of property, right? It's really perfect, right? From the perspective of the people who are sitting at the top, this is ideal. And you know what? I'm not even faulting them. Because remember, humans are evil fucking violent monkeys. And if you can't get them to believe in something. If you can't get them to believe in something of value, how do you create the resources to support state sponsored violence, which is what keeps any kind of social cohesion going in the first place? So how can you even fault like the evil overlord Illuminati? Get Alex Jones in on this. He's got 10. I'm sure he could do it way better than me. And you know what? I don't even dislike the fact that there has to be that controlling class, right? It doesn't really bother me because the flip side of that, as much as people want to talk about anarchy and how great that is, I'll tell you what. You take the thin veneer of society off fucking evil monkeys, and believe me, there's nothing left. The whole thing lies in ruins. People can't trade. People can't do business. Everybody has to go to the most basic level of humanity, which is almost total violence. So, the next time you're at a tinfoil hat party and someone's like, there shouldn't be the Illuminati, well, guess what? There's worse things. So, a little bit more high energy, a little bit less metaphysical today, although the whole thing does rely on metaphysics. I mean, what do you think debt is? So, there you go. Don't know what I'm going to come back with that tomorrow. That was fun, man. I'm riding high right now. That was good. That felt good. Man, huge endorphin rush. All right. Nicholas say, looking forward to finishing off my podcast with Jason Bonello. I'll get some links to his, I'll put some links to the website he's got in both the podcast with him and this one, because I mentioned him twice now. It's only 10 minutes in. And I hope everybody out there is doing great. Don't take me too seriously, and don't think that you can run out there, and change everything because you don't like the fact that everybody's completely insane because they believe in a system that caters to their some of their worst traits. How else would it work, right? Anyway, hugs and love. Everybody's great. I'm great, and I will be back tomorrow or the next day. Hello, hello, what is going on? This is Nicholas Say. It's Saturday. It's the 1st of December. And it's been a few days. Not doing a monologue every day this week because I have my first ever interview podcast, whatever, up with Jason Bonello. Fantastic man. Brilliant photographer. Lives in Hong Kong. It is up on YouTube. Probably sitting right next to this clip, this video, whatever. So, if you can't get enough of me talking about stuff, it's right there. It's waiting for you. I really went on a great rant. It still feels good about money. I'm going to go a little further today into cryptocurrency and blockchain. And that's something I'm going to put links in the description of this one to a couple of the websites that I either currently publish on or have been published on concerning the blockchain and cryptocurrency industry. Obviously, most people will be most familiar, at least in terms of a name, with probably Bitcoin. Ethereum is another big one. Ripple is actually more valuable than Ethereum at the moment based on the total value of coins in existence. And there's many others. That has become a very popular topic, or at least it was during 2017 when the price of these tokens absolutely exploded. Bitcoin went from about $1,000 per Bitcoin in January of 2017 to right around 20,000 in December. It then quickly lost value, and at the moment I think it's hovering right around 4,000. When I write, I normally take a journalistic approach as much as possible, although if you read a lot of my work, you realize, well, it's pretty flexible. My interpretation of journalism is fairly flexible, especially when it comes to opinion, but I don't really give too much in the way of financial advice. I'm going to go on the record now and say that I think that cryptos have a lot further to fall. I drafted a piece to that effect when Bitcoin was back around hovering above 7,000, and I think it could go all the way down, back down to 1,000. I could see that happening very easily. It may not go that low. It may go lower. There's just no way to know. One of the big things that's happening, that has happened over the last 2 years, is that for a very long time, Bitcoin really was the only game in town. There were not many other cryptocurrencies and now it seems like there's a new one every day, or a new token, or someone's got a new platform. And many of these are small companies. And like any startup, any startup in any sector, many of these, probably the vast majority, will not exist in a few years, maybe less than that. The big players in the realm, are still Bitcoin, Ethereum, excuse me, coffee time, Ripple, Litecoin. There's a couple Bitcoin clones or something. There's people who write about these forks and these split offs. Like, I don't know what the difference is, to be honest. Like Bitcoin Cash is one of them. I don't see the appeal in it. Have I ever bought a crypto? No, I have never bought a crypto. In fact, I wouldn't accept them for payment until recently. I do think we're getting down to the levels that we will visit again, meaning that, if you buy Bitcoin, or maybe not Bitcoin, but if you were to buy Ripple at 30 cents, it may go further down, but you will probably, in the fullness of time, see higher prices. I think you have to be very selective, because, as I said, there are many, many, many of these things out there, and who's to say one is going to be better than the other? Who's to say that one will exist or be used in a few years, right? The entire network is these are called, most of these are permissionless blockchains, right? So what that means basically is that people are incentivized. EOS is another big one that launched recently. Sorry, I forgot that one. People are incentivized to do essentially to run the backbone of these systems on a decentralized basis, which means that there's computers everywhere around the world, quote unquote, mining these tokens in some way, shape, or form. They all are a little different. And there's lots of information on all the big ones out there if you feel like reading about it. I'm not even going to go bother look for links because it's so easy to find. So, but if you're interested in how these things work, if you're a real tech head, believe me, there's a lot of people out there like you, and you will have no trouble finding information about these things. I take them, and I got into this because of the financial aspect of it. I was writing for a place called Cambridge House that does they're basically stock promoters, or I think they're actual businesses. They organize conferences for people who want to promote companies, which is, in the end, it's just stock promotion, right? And crypto's exploded onto the scene. One of these guys who's got long-standing connections with Cambridge House, first name Frank, something like that, runs U.S. Global Investors. Frank Holmes. He was one of the first ones to help take a crypto miner / blockchain company public, Hive Blockchain. Shares exploded, 600%, 700% rise. As the market has cooled, their shares have been slaughtered like almost everybody else. Mike Novogratz took Galaxy Digital. His idea is to have like a fucking crypto merchant bank like Goldman Sachs. And, again, in the fullness of time, it might work out. I admire him for his courage, but he just got nailed. And I didn't read the nature of the losses, if they're mark to market, or he actually monetized the losses of around 130 million last quarter, I believe it was. And that's a pretty heavy hit for a bank that was maybe worth double that. Their asset base was maybe worth double that in the prior quarter, so that's not great. But Hive Blockchain, same thing. These guys, I don't even know if they're making money at this point, but the bottom line is that not all of them, but the vast majority of these, what are called cryptocurrencies, rely on a decentralized network to function, which means people have to have the incentive, which would be to be paid in the crypto usually, to make the thing work. And when it costs $5,000 or $6,000 to quote unquote mine a Bitcoin, and you can only sell them for $4, unless somebody feels like subsidizing the network, there's a limit to how long that can go on. I'm not familiar with how the algorithms work. Maybe the prices drop off or something. I don't know. If you're into this, and if you're into this kind of thing, and you want to talk about and educate the general public and me in the process about how this works, and how Bitcoin miners could fare, hit me up. emails in the description. Love to have you on. But as for me, from the outside looking in, given my technical prowess in the field, if you were mining gold or nickel or copper and you hemorrhaged money on every unit that you produced, you're not going to be in business very long. And also, the shareholders would probably shut you down pretty quick, and you'd pivot to something else as a company, or sell it off or something. But yeah, so that's the situation with these things. And everyone's kind of hoping that people in the future perceive value in these currencies in effect in operating digital networks that have no centralized control structure. That's a big gamble. I think, for me personally, the first crypto that I'm going to be looking at is something like Ripple, just because they've made tremendous inroads in the established banking sector. And at some point, somebody's going to take advantage of the system for cross-border transactions, which is more or less what the platform was designed for. They also have another aspect to their company that's not really connected to XRP, the token, and they're going gangbusters too. Ethereum, just because of its versatility, I think makes sense too, although it's still a little expensive for my taste, given the fact that at this point, not a lot of people are using cryptos for settlement. And until there's a lot less volatility in the sector, who's going to want to use it as a currency? This is one of the arguments I made for people that I met in bars and in social situations during 2017. It's really nice when your asset, your money is going up in value by, double digit percentages every day. That's awesome, right? But when they go down, that's a real heartbreaker. And, let's say that you're counting on this to pay for your monthly bills. It's great. Oh, my rent is now half as much. Oh, that's great. Well, now my rent's double because of the currency I'm holding. Well, that sucks. And nobody wants that kind of volatility in the currency market. That's part of the reason why major currencies don't move that much, right? That's why central banks don't want to see double digit or even the high single digit percentage moves in their currencies. It's just not. It really, it spooks the flock, man. The sheep don't like it. Freaks them out. They start to wonder what the money's worth. And, well, obviously it's worth whatever faith you put in it. And that's a scary concept. It's terrifying for most people. And so I think that you're not going to see, and this is again not an original thought. You're not going to see a lot. You're not going to see a lot of people jumping in on cryptos until they settle at either very low prices or very high prices, right? Because all these arguments that were made during Bitcoin's run-up are basically true. And the same argument was made recently by, I think it was Peter Thiel, that, when you compare the amount of fiat currency that exists, even if you look at actual cash, not physical cash supply, but bank deposits, not money that's been taken into deep storage. The central banks and the financial industry has some really weird ways of looking at money. But if you just look at money that exists in a spendable form, even stuff that's been locked into CDs and stuff like that, there's a lot of it out there. There's I don't know if it's hundreds of trillions, but there's tens of trillions of it out there. And when you compare that to the supply of these cryptos, even though anyone could make them up, which is true for fiat currency, the cryptos, there's a lot less of them. So the argument that they could go to a very high price is sound. Whether or not people will put the same kind of faith into these currencies, well, that's something that's completely removed. I mean, who knows? Who knows if they will? Who knows if they won't? They certainly offer a lot of optionality that government-backed currencies don't. The amount of regulation, I'll say this, trying to open bank accounts, it's fucking impossible. If I want to open up a crypto account, it takes literally 10 seconds. It takes as long as I want to punch the keys into the keyboard. That's how long it takes. I write in a few things and blah, right there. Even the level 2, level 3 know your customer stuff is a snap. I mean, you do want to have some oversight, but at the same time, when you erect massive walls to the banking infrastructure, people are going to do something else. And I'm not necessarily against the existing banking infrastructure. I think that banking has come a long way in 100 years, and they're not necessarily inherently evil. Many people do. I don't. Because it ends up just being people, and I take that Buddhist view that there's no such thing as a truly bad person, but there's people who make very poor decisions, and some people make a hell of a lot of them during a lifetime, and they end up getting called bad people, and, well, maybe Given the way people look at the world, maybe that's a valid point. I don't know. But I say these institutions are made of people, and people are capable of infinite good and infinite evil, infinite intelligence and infinite stupidity in every moment. So it'd be nice if the established banking system kind of came around and made it a little bit easier to use their services and kind of embrace some of these technological advances. Because there's no reason. Like, one thing I've written a lot about, I've written very harshly about, is Swift. A Swift system, for those of you who don't know, there's not many ways to transfer money from one bank to another internationally. You basically have to use Swift from bank to bank, and that's not 100% true anymore. There's some green shoots coming up for other technologies to do it. I won't get into it. They're so small at this moment, but yeah. So, and there's the idea that it would take 40 for me to pay $40 for this and have to wait a week is absolutely insane. You're literally moving digits from a register from one computer to another. I can have a voice call with somebody anywhere on the planet that has high speed internet, like that. And the idea, I mean, that's much with video. I can record it. Yeah, it's crazy. But I can't move, a few digits from one bank's computer to another. And the argument that it's somehow more secure, give me a fucking break. Those systems are wide open to abuse and corruption and theft and da 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 da. And it's time that the central banks stop acting like they have some kind of product that's unique or special. They have fucking servers. They have well protected gated servers. That's all they fucking have. That's it. They're computers with numbers in them. That's it. That's all money is. And fucking deal with it, right? I mean, it sucks in a way that it's come to the point where everybody has put basically total faith in the global economy, in what are essentially a handful of well-guarded computers. But that's the situation. The money that you see printed, that's just a very, first of all, it's a very small amount of the actual money that exists, of the debt that's been created, because debt is money, remember? So there's a very small amount that's actually existed in currency form, and it's no more secure, safe, or whatever than the stuff they're keeping in the computers. So have fun with that. I mean, believe me, if they have a problem with the underlying confidence in fiat currency, the fact that you have it in cash is going to mean absolutely jack shit. It means nothing. You're fucked. And that's the situation, right? I mean, they again, I'm after learning about economics, central banking, the global banking infrastructure for a few years, I'm convinced that the vast majority of what these people do, economists, people who represent these banks, is go out of their way to make the system seem more complicated than it is. Because they use a lot of big words, and then they get in with these fucking mathematical formulas like they understand something. And that's the biggest load of bullshit that I've ever seen passed off. I mean, and I know that's hyperbole, but that's fucking true. They show up with these advanced formulas that look like that's like another fucking string theory. They should be running this economic formula on the computers at CERN or something, and they're trying to explain something that can't be explained. Give me a fucking break. Really. But people buy it. So what are you going to do? Right? If I go down, I want to buy some noodle soup for lunch. Well, I better have some of that fiat currency. If I want pho, I need the noodle soup. Because the person selling that noodle soup, they think that money has value. And I've never seen people argue so much about such small amounts of money as I've seen. Now, I know in Vietnam, I know it's a poor country. It's actually got a super low GDP, or per capita GDP, but how much every person earns on average is like next to nothing. It's amazing they live as well as they do, but the overall costs here are very low. But yeah, man, people love that fiat currency. That is for sure. They love that fiat currency, and it's crazy. And I can ramble on this money stuff. Anyway, that's my view on cryptos. A little extra for you on fiat. I'm gonna do one more monologue tomorrow. I'm gonna upload it. So hope everyone's having a good day, And yeah, feeling good. Gonna go get some noodle soup for lunch, I think. So good energy, good vibes. Hopefully, wise action. Do your best to act wisely. I know I do. I'm not perfect. That's where the forgiveness comes in. Peace and love. Hugs. Nicholas Say. Feel free to add comments down below. If you're interested in jumping on doing a podcast, you hit me up at the email. Get some Skype going. Figure it out. All right. Nicholas Say Podcast rocking out. Oh, and check out the duck. The duck is awesome.